Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Kevin Zwicker from Fast Count coming at you. And before I get into this live, please remember to like the video and subscribe. It helps the channel out in more ways than you even know. Plus, it's free. So this is your AEW Full Gear post show live here on the Fast Count. It was a long show. It was a show that we saw a lot of different matches come out that I did a prediction show earlier. Some I got wrong, a lot more I got right. But we're going to talk about it. We're going to digest the show in multiple different angles, hear your guys' opinions on it, and just go over what happened today. So we're going to start with the pre-show. And if you've seen my lives in the past, I usually don't talk about the pre-show much. But this was a special occasion when it came to the pre-show. We saw the return to the ring of the great Big Boom AJ of the Costco guys. And this was a match that was hyped for the past several weeks. We've seen these guys put in a lot of work when it comes to the PR department, man. Big Boom AJ and his son Big Justice and the Rizzler, they have been making all of the rounds recently. They have done Jimmy Fallon. They went to MSNBC with Tony Khan and sat down. They have done multiple different types of videos promoting this match. And this was a match, man, that this is what pro wrestling's about. You know, we have a lot of different opinions about what makes a 5-star match, or what makes a match good, or what makes a match entertaining. But in my opinion, and a lot of people that were in the building, man, this was what wrestling was about, man. Just fun. This match, that's the only word I could use to really describe it, was fun, man. Big Boom AJ, he got a big reaction at the Prudential Center tonight on Full Gear. The Rizzler got a huge ovation when he came out with Big Show, aka Paul White, to the ring. And this was a match, man, that, like I said, was fun. You saw, and we got to give props to QT Marshall for being the pro that he is. He's not a guy who's usually on TV that often doing matches. But he came out, he made Big Boom AJ look like $1,000,000. Everybody was into it. We saw the great Big Boom AJ take the W in this match against QT Marshall. And it was just fun spots. You saw QT interacting with Big AJ's family. You saw him come out with this weight belt, and instead of having the boom, it says Doom. He tried to give it to Big Boom AJ's family. They said no. He ends up giving it to his wife. She accepts, obviously, and they go back and forth. And there's just points in the match where you could see AJ was kind of on the gas side, and you expect this from a guy who hasn't been in the ring for 20 years. This was his 20-year return to the ring. And everybody was into it. And there was a spot where QT Marshall was going to interfere with the Rizzler. And you see Paul White just stand up in front of him and say, "What you gonna do?" We get back into the ring. You see Big Boom AJ hit the boom with the power bomb, pick up the W. Everybody was happy. At this point, I say, screw it. Give Big Boom AJ the AEW championship. He is the most over babyface in the company. And I hope this isn't his last match, because this was a big success for these two guys. And I'm sure that if we could find a way to have another match with Big Boom AJ and AEW, I'm sure that it will get an even bigger reaction than what we got tonight. Now, we are going to go into the main card, and we're going to start the show with the 4-way for the Tag Team Championship. We had Private Party, who is recently the newly crowned Tag Team Champions after defeating the Young Bucks. We got the Outrunners, who are as over as any tag team in the division at the moment. We have the House of Black combination of Brody King and Malachi Black. And then we have the Great of the Acclaimed. Now, this whole match, you saw this whole match being teased, tension between the Acclaimed. You remember a couple of weeks back where we saw the Hurt Syndicate make their debuts and newly start becoming on this recruiting campaign that they have been on. You saw them hand a business card to both Max Caster, and his partner, Anthony Bowens. You see Anthony Bowens immediately dismiss it, but you see Matt Caster just linger on it and hold it. This whole match, we've seen different spots where they just weren't on the same page. And this isn't the same jolly Acclaim team that we've seen in the past. We have a big edge when it comes to Matt Caster right now. He doesn't want to really do the scissoring like they've done in the past. He doesn't want to say the daddy ass things. He's just on a different wavelength. Now, with the Outrunners, man, These are guys who have organically been getting over with the crowd for the last several months. They've been working their way from Collision, really making an impact. They have done funny vignettes to where I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys. They are my favorite tag team in AEW at the moment. You saw moments in time where you see my guy Floyd hulking up, and there's just tiny moments in the match where it feels like maybe one might see the Outrunners catch a W, but at the end of the day, we saw the private party pick up the W. They go out into the crowd celebrating with their, I'm assuming it's either a younger brother or a son, but they celebrated in the crowd with one of their family members. And this was a match that was a great way to kick open the show. It really set the tone throughout the show. There was many highs and lows of the show, but this was one of the highs that they got. We're going to go into the comment section before I get into the next match. And we got Salty Grampy 2367. I feel like I just seen this guy. He comments that the Rizzler was the best part of the match. I agree. I don't really do the thing as well as he do, but he should be in the AEW Hall of Fame once they start it up. This was the match. That match got so much buzz on different social media platforms and pages that normally don't cover wrestling. I saw right after the match, we saw on Barstool that they covering it, and Barstool usually doesn't cover wrestling at all. So I think this was an unmitigated success bringing those guys in for AEW because it got them much exposure to different people that they usually wouldn't get. Next, we are going to go into the match between Mercedes Moné and Chris Statlander for the TBS Championship. I've stated many times on this channel, and I'm going to continue to state many more times on this channel, that Mercedes Moné is the GOAT. She is the greatest female wrestler ever to strap on the boots, and we saw why she is that tonight. This was the longest AEW's women match in history, coming under a little bit under 20 minutes, which take it as you will. That, you know, people are going to find a way to complain and saying, well, wow, really? That's the longest match. It's not even 20 minutes. The facts are facts, but she was involved in the longest AEW women's match in the history of the company so far. This is a match that going in, you saw the power of Statlander, the way that she was able to take out Camille in different ways. This was a match where, in my opinion, I always knew that Mercedes was going to pick up the W. But the way that it went down was not what I predicted. This was a clean finish for the most part. There was no Camille involvement in this match. If you were watching the show before the match even kicked off, you saw Mercedes Moné just talk down to Camille as if she was a dog, saying that she can't get anything right. She's a shitty driver. Anytime that she's put her in a position to take out Statlander, she's failed. So she's basically useless without her. And it's you're seeing the teasing of the eventual Camille face turn and the eventual Camille versus Mercedes match. But what I don't like about it is, if you want that match to succeed, I would have booked it the way that they originally were booking Camille, as this unstoppable brick house, where she was the one taking people out, kicking ass and taking names. But the last few weeks that they've had her, they've kind of made her look like this bumbling idiot. So when they eventually build up to that match, I want them to be able to book Camille a little bit stronger and to make her look more competent going into that match. Now, this was a match where we saw a lot of high spots between Mercedes and Chris Statlander. Chris Statlander displayed her obvious power in this match. Now, there was a lot of back and forth in this match, and there was a lot of false counts. We see Mercedes get a reaction from the crowd that was very negative, which she has been getting for the last several shows. But there was points to where she was able to turn the crowd and get some of it in her favor. We saw a point in the match, and this is the most pivotal point of the match. She hit a three amigos on Statlander, and she goes for the frog splash, but you see Statlander reverse it, and it looks like we're going to get a small percentage of a chance that Statlander was going to pick up the W. It does not happen. We see Mercedes go for a roll-up, and they do this little exchange roll-up between the two, but it was kind of like an awkward thing. Like, it wasn't meant to happen the way that it did. And then we see Mercedes eventually pick up the roll-up in a sloppily way, and she picks up the W, retaining the TBS championship. Now, at this point, outside of Camille, I don't know any obvious challengers for the title, but I feel as if that it's going to be lined up relatively soon. They're starting to plant the seeds for that person to be Camille, but I don't know if at this moment Camille is the right person to take the championship. I feel like down the line, like I said, if they were able to build her a little bit stronger than they have previously, since they've done in the last several weeks, she would be the right person. But right now, there is no obvious challenger for the title. We're going to go back to the comments. We're looking at my man, Tony Hayes. Greetings, everyone. What's going on, buddy? I'm glad that you're in here. Good to see you. So we're going to go into the next match on the card, and we have Jay White versus Hangman. Now, the buildup of this match, they have been highlighting the fact that Hangman has not been able to get a clean victory over Jay White in all their history of going at each other. They have gone multiple different times in Ring of Honor. They've gone at each other in AEW, and Hangman has not been able to get a clean win over Jay White. Now, this is a match that Tony got the big gold belt in the back. You know what's cool about that belt, Tony? That belt is actually signed by Sting and Kevin Nash. A few weeks, I live in North Carolina, so in a few weeks there's this big time wrestling convention that Ric Flair is going to be after. I need 2 signatures to where I feel like it's complete: Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair. If I get those 2 signatures on those belts, I am a happy camper. Goldberg would be a bonus, but the guy never does any signings. But we are going to go into Jay White, and like I said, they're really highlighting the fact that those guys, have had a very lopsided victory. If you remember in the last pay-per-view match they've had, Jay White was the guy who took the W. Hangman looked as if he was going to take a W, but he was injured his knee and his leg at that point and wasn't able to capitalize. And we saw a very similar finish to that in this match. It's this feud. They've been planting seeds to where this is supposed to be this huge deal. But just for me personally, I think that these 2 guys are on a collision course to where they should be going after the AEW championship. Because after the main event that we saw tonight, which I'll be getting into later on, there is no more clear-cut challengers for Mox outside of Darby Allin. Tony, the gold will mash your eyes. Trust me, mine does. Hey, man, I need it. I need the signatures more than anything, man. Just for my own wrestling fandom, I need those signatures to complete the set. Booker T would also be nice too, but let's not get greedy, right? But so this was a match where it was in a spot where people were kind of at a point where they were tired because this was a long night. So there was occasionally different matches on the spot that they were tired. And this was the first match that they were tired in because there was not a lot of spots where you would go, oh my God, what the hell are these guys doing? It was a very slow and methodical match that they were having. The pacing was very slow. There was points in the match where Hangman looked as if he was going to win, but every opportunity that he had, he came up short. We see Jay White pick up the win. And the sequence to where he picked up the win, man. You see, I got my notes right here. They were going so fast, and I was writing so slow that I wasn't able to really get the maneuvers that they were able to do. At the end, there was a tease of a buckshot lariat that Hangman was going to hit. All right. He gets caught in a Blade Runner by Jay White. He finds a way to get out of the Blade Runner. Then Jay White somehow finds a way to put him back in the Blade Runner, hits it for the 1, 2, 3. Jay White continues his win streak against Hangman Page. And we see Jay White take another W in the series, leaving Hangman Page in a spot where it's like, where does the guy go? After his big win against Swerve in the cage match, I kind of assumed that they were going to go in a direction where Swerve was going to be playing the reverse role that Hangman did, where Hangman was the guy chasing Swerve the whole time. I thought we were going to have a reversal in that role where somehow Hangman was going to get his hands on the AEW championship, and we're going to have Swerve chase him this time instead of the other way around. But right now, the way that he's been taking these L's to Jay White, I don't know what the plan is. We've seen him factor in later on in the show, but at this moment, man, I don't see where Hangman is. I am assuming that they're going to have another rematch with him and Jay White because the way that the seeds were planted. At the end, we saw Hangman attack Jay White again after he was leaving in the ramp, but there is no obvious direction at the moment. I think the vision is going to become a little bit clearer as we head towards World's End in December. I'll be able to get you guys a better answer, and I'm going to be covering the stuff in between on the channel before then as well. So we're going to get back to my boy Tony. Tony, I would do a spinneroonie on the floor in front of Booker T if he signed my belt. Man, these guys like Book don't really do signings like that, man. At least in my area. You know, like I said, I live in North Carolina, so we don't get a lot of cool shit. So it's like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to get his signature. I'm probably going to have to go to like WWE World or something, right? Or Fanatics Fest that happened in New York earlier this year, where it was this huge signing. I'm going to have to do traveling for the show, man. If you guys want to, if there's ever any individuals that want to see me like vlog me doing autograph journeys, I will surely do it if that's enough audience of people want to see me do that, because I like doing those anyways, right? So next we're going to get into Will Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher. In my prediction show earlier, I said that Kyle Fletcher having a match on pay-per-view against Will Ospreay was a W in itself. And boy, was I wrong. Now, this match started off really hot. If you've been watching the show lately, you have seen that they have gotten really personal between the two. Kyle Fletcher has tried to distinguish himself and make him as different as Will Ospreay as possible. Shave his head. That's commitment to wrestling, because there's no way I'd be shaving my head for any damn angles. And you see the match. And Kyle Fletcher, you know, I never want to say this about somebody getting hurt, because it comes across as a little bit like morbid to me. But Mark Davis getting hurt was probably the biggest blessing in disguise for Kyle Fletcher when it came to his career. Because prior to that, I've seen Kyle Fletcher have singles matches, of course, but I never viewed him as anything other than a tag team specialist. And they have done a really good job of building him up as a singles individual, to where you don't view him as just the guy from Aussie Open. You view him as a guy that is an actual singles wrestler. And having a big time match with Will Ospreay on a pay-per-view is as good as it gets, because Will Ospreay, in my opinion, pound for pound right now, is the best in-ring wrestler at the moment. Now, we're not saying the best, because there's more than just in-ring ability when it comes to who's the best. We got guys like Roman Reigns, we got Cody Rhodes, we got Kenny Omega that's coming back, we got MJF, all guys who, in my opinion, could make a case for who are the best today. But if we're just talking bell to bell, at this single moment right now, I'm going with Will Ospreay. No, Tony, there isn't a time limit on my show. If you're new to the channel, Tony, I only go live after the WWE PLEs and the AEW pay-per-views. Most of my other stuff is short form content. I do like a lot of like shorts, which I'll be filming after this, and then I do like standalone videos for big time angles. But I usually just go live after the big shows. Do you think TK does too much Colombian marching powder before his shows? I don't know what the man does in his personal life, man. I don't. There's a lot of rumor and innuendo that he is a big fan of the Colombian Bam Bam, but I don't know what the guy does, man. The guy, one thing I do know what the guy does, the guy loves wrestling, right? If he's willing to put on these like 4-hour shows late at night and have guys like me talk about it, right? So this was a match, man, that started off really hot. I don't know if any of you guys are big into UFC, but there was a signature history, and that was Anderson Silva versus Chael Sonnen. And the way that fight started off, this was a blood feud between the two of these guys. They hyped it up for a really long time. They hated each other. And usually if you watch any UFC fights, you see it's really slow and plotting at the beginning, because guys are trying to, just get a feel for the fight. This was a fight that immediately, as soon as the bell rang, they went like two bulls. And this is what happened in this match tonight. Kyle Fletcher has made it apparently clear that this is the biggest match of his career. And I agree that it is. There was a lot of different spots in this match that I like. There was a spot in particular that I found really interesting that got a big laugh out of me. Was Kyle Fletcher was getting chopped in the chest multiple times by Will Ospreay. And you see Will Ospreay try to do the honorable thing and do an exchange and put his hands behind his back, opening up his chest like this, waiting for Kyle Fletcher to give him his chops back. But instead, Kyle Fletcher gives him a super kick to the face. And it was funny because if you're a bad guy, right? If you're really a heel, why would you want to do that even exchange? Why wouldn't you just go for the jugular? Kind of like that Victor Ortiz and Floyd Mayweather fight where Victor Ortiz went for the hug and then he went for another hug on Floyd Mayweather and Floyd knocked him out because it's like, okay, like we're not doing the honorable thing. We're trying to win. And you knew at some point that Don Callis was going to get his dirty little fingers into this match somehow. And he interfered with the outcome, but not really. But the moment that was huge and was the conclusion of this match was Kyle Fletcher hitting this brain buster on Will Ospreay on the turnbuckle to pick up the W was huge. Like I said, I thought just being in the ring on a pay-per-view against Will Ospreay was a W. And in my mind, I never thought we were going to actually see Will Ospreay pick up a W. But we did. I mean, not Will Ospreay, but we did. We saw Kyle Fletcher pick up the W. And with a win as big as this, Tony should do whatever he can to not squander this. We've seen previous wrestlers in the past, like Wardlow or Brian Cage, pick up big W's in signature matches, and then their momentum just fizzle out somehow. I don't want this to happen to Kyle Fletcher. I want them to be able to build another star. They've kind of fumbled the bag on multiple different guys, and when you have momentum, it's one of those things where it's like you have it and it's gone that fast. And I don't want them to be able to squander that. And they've set them up beautifully right now. So we're going to see where this goes. I think the fact that Will Ospreay is so close to him and is a guy that has the ear of Tony Khan bodes well for him. But we'll see. I noticed that in my notes, I skipped over one match earlier in the night. But I'm going to go look at the comments. Tony, he does love wrestling. True. I would love to play some poker with TK. If he is on Colombian Bam Bam, you guys might be playing for a couple of hours, buddy. TK should have went to WIU instead of U of I. Tony, where are you from? Are you from Illinois? Macomb has lots of wrestling marks. Are you from Illinois, Tony? Are you from Illinois? Go Bears? Go Cubs? Or Sox? Or Bulls? My boy AJ Schreiber is from Chicago, man. He's a Cubs fan, though. And he likes the Ravens somehow. We're going to go backtrack a little bit, and we're going to talk about MJF and Roderick Strong. Now, this was the second match of the show, and if you know anything about wrestling, people usually call like the second match like the death match, because if you have the option to wrestle on a show, you usually want to go first or last if you have any say-so, and this is a match that was fine. It was fine. Going into it, you knew MJF was going to win. The thing that was the most eye-opening for me and most eventful of the match was the way that MJF started it. You saw MJF cutting a promo. Obviously, he's a guy from Long Island. You see him cutting a promo on New Jersey, talking about how much Jersey sucks. And he brings up the fact of Roderick Strong's parents being abusive and how his mom shot his dad. And you see Roderick Strong not taking any of that. You see at the end, MJF putting the signature armbar on Roderick Strong, making him tap out. Now, the most eventful part of this match was after. You see MJF taking Roderick Strong's hand and putting it in the steel chair and stomping on it. And then you see Adam Cole and the rest of the Undisputed guys come after that. And you see Kyle O'Reilly come out, who, as we all know, has a past with both of these guys. And you see him push Adam Cole down and blame him for the fact that Roderick wouldn't even be in this position if it wasn't for Adam Cole's obsession with MJF. So you see dissension in the rank and the Undisputed guys. We're eventually going to get that one-on-one match with Cole and MJF again. I'm a big MJF guy. Love the guy, but I don't really have any interest in this match. I've said this before in previous things that I've done. MJF is a guy who we can all acknowledge is great on the mic. But at the same time, his promos can be very repetitive. It's, insults you, calls you an idiot, or uses some foul language or whatever. talks about something that happened in your past or something like that for the shock and awe value. It's just rinse and repeat. I feel like if they use them similar, and I know we're not in the territory days, but if they use them similar to like a guy like Andre the Giant, who was a special attraction where it's like he went from town to town and you sporadically saw him, it would feel like a more of a bigger deal if he wasn't around. Would you like to know what brand of firearm Colorado dad was shot with? Do you have any knowledge of firearms? I don't. I don't have any knowledge of firearms, man. I'm not anti Second Amendment or anything like that. I just don't know. You know, would I like to? Is that a real story to where his dad shot his mom? That's something that I didn't know until recently, and I probably should have been Googling that, right? If I'm supposed to be a professional at this, I should have been Googling that. That's on me. But I would tell me, acknowledge me, Tony. Next, we're going to go into the Mariah May Champagne Championship celebration. This was something that was talked about multiple different times, hyped up for multiple different events. We've seen Mariah May call out and yearn for Mina multiple different occasions. Now, we see Mina come out in a nice, beautiful cocktail dress. We see champagne on the side. We see her acknowledge and profess her love for Mariah May. We see Mariah May come out. They talk about how this is a very worthy celebration. Talks about how she's very happy. They do this interlocking thing where they're both sipping champagne with their arms interlocked. They start doing this dancing number. Then they walk to the ring, and you see Mina walking forward. And then you see Mariah May with the champagne bottle tease that she's about to hit Mina in the head with it. Mina ducks. She looks shocked, like, what is going on, Mariah? And you always know how on the side of the ramps of the ring, they have these tables. You see Mina just kind of tackle Mariah, and they go through the table, and you see Mina get up with blood streaming through her lips. You see her screaming, and we all know now this is going to be the next challenger for Mariah May for the AEW Championship. It's just great because I feel like with Mercedes having the TBS Championship, the women's title has been kind of overshadowed. You haven't rarely seen the title defended on TV. You haven't seen it really defended on Dynamite. It wasn't on the pay-per-view tonight. So it feels like a background player when the TBS title was kind of designed to be their version of the Intercontinental Championship. But since Mercedes is the one holding that belt, that's the belt that's being highlighted more. But I would like to see that championship, at least the one that Mariah has, be defended in a way to where there's meaning. And now we have a story. The way that we got to the story was kind of strange because it's just like you're just stating that Mariah's a snake in the grass person, so she was going to turn on Mina. But even though Mina didn't really do anything to get, turned on, but hey, why make sense of booking, right? Mina is hot. I agree. She is a very attractive woman. So we are going into the Jack Perry versus Daniel Garcia match. And they play this video package before the match where Daniel Garcia is out at like a basketball court. He has his headphones in, and he's listening to all these messages by his mother, talking about how he's a selfless guy, how he's always put others' wants before his, how he's a guy who doesn't like to do things for himself and is very selfless. And at one point in your life, you have to do what's best for you. And this is the point. Now, the way that they have been building up this match between Jack Perry and Daniel Garcia is very similar to The Dark Knight, if you've ever seen that movie. You see throughout that movie, you see the Joker trying to have Batman cross over or ditch his morale code. And they've been doing that with Jack Perry and Daniel Garcia. He's been pushing Daniel Garcia to get to his level and to brutalize him the way that he has brutalized others. We've seen points in this match where going into the show, I predicted that Daniel Garcia was going to walk out with the championship because if you've been paying attention, Daniel Garcia has re-signed with AEW. If you've read any of the internet rumors, you've seen that they view Daniel Garcia as a building block in the company. And if any of these things have any validity to it, you are going to have this guy win, especially now with the elites kind of being in shambles. Kenny Omega is currently on the sideline, even though he will be making his return against Gabe Kidd at the Tokyo Dome. That show is going to be going on at like 2 a.m. or American time. So I'm thinking instead of going after, because that after show would be at like 6 in the morning. I'm thinking about just doing a watch along. If anybody would be into it, right? If anybody would be into doing a watch along at 2 in the morning of me watching Japanese wrestling dressed like JR, I'll do it, right? But you see throughout this match, you see Jack Perry trying to push Daniel Garcia over the limit. You see him messing with Daddy Magic, who's doing commentary on the sideline, who is a big champion of Daniel Garcia. You see Daniel Garcia get powerbombed through the timekeeper table. You see Daniel Garcia and Jack Perry just going at it. You see Jack Perry dominating the match, the majority of it, until you see Daniel Garcia, for lack of a better terms, hulking up. And you see Jack Perry do that Jesus-like pose that he does. And you see Daniel Garcia hit him with a pile driver. And he says, that's not enough. That's not enough for me. For all the things that Jack Perry has been doing with me mentally, a simple power bomb isn't the best way to put him through. He hooks him up in a sharpshooter. Jack Perry hits the ropes. He is able to drag Jack Perry back into the middle of the ring. He taps out. Jack Perry takes the L. Daniel Garcia is our new TNT champion. You see Daniel Garcia go into the crowd and celebrate it. You see him take this AEW type banner from one of the fans and wraps it around himself and walks out the ring, because Daniel Garcia has made it abundantly clear, even though if you've been paying attention to the negotiations when he was going through with his contract, that there was kind of a will he, won't he leave, to go to NXT under Triple H. He's made it abundantly clear with that statement that he is AEW all the way. And I think that's best for him at the moment too, because I feel like if he went to WWE, he would have to go to NXT first. And at that point, after a year, 6 months, depending on how long they wanted to keep him down there, I feel like he would get lost in the shuffle there just because of the level of main event talent that they have at the moment, especially with somebody like The Rock, who at any moment could take your spot because he's The Rock, right? So he's in a good spot with AEW. I agreed with him winning the W. This really leaves the Elite in a funny place because the only person that has a championship now is Okada. And I don't know where he's at, man. Why would you sign Okada, one of the greatest wrestling in-ring guys of probably the last decade, and not even have the guy on the show? It's just weird. There's things about Tony's booking that I just kind of scratch my head at sometimes, where it's just like, okay, I like this, but then there's like two things that I look at the corp like, I don't like that. It's just strange. When Jack Perry was left tied to the chair, I wish he would have shouted, I gotta take a shit. I don't know if Tony, if you remember that famous podcast that CM Punk did with Colt Cabana after he left WWE. He was talking about how he was on these Z-Packs all the time. I was kind of like a zombie. And he talked about how he had a match and shit himself. And SmackDown at the time wasn't live. So they were able to edit it out. But like he could see the moments watching about like where he shit himself and where they edited it out. Reminds me of that. Jack Perry and CM Punk, always interlocked, right? No matter how long the time goes, no matter where companies these two goes, they're always somehow finding a way to interlock, right? So we're going to go into Keshka and Ricochet. And I'm looking at my notes. I've said it, and I've wrote it multiple times, man. This match reminded me a lot of WrestleMania, where we had AJ Styles go one-on-one against Nakamura, where that was a match that most people going into it thought this could possibly be the best match on the show. You have two great competitors going one-on-one, but for some reason, it just didn't click. And it's strange because those guys had so many other matches, and if you watch their matches in Japan, they were great. And we saw a great match between Takeshita and Ricochet a few weeks prior, but it just really didn't click. And the fact that they were in a dead spot, because they were just coming off of the Jack Perry and Daniel Garcia match, which was very emotional. They got the crowd on high. The crowd is very quiet for this one. There was kind of spots where the crowd started to get into it, but then somehow the momentum would get lost. Of course, we saw that Don Callis was going to get involved and factor into the outcome. But this was more so a match of speed versus strength, We saw Ricochet show off his athletic ability and show off why he is one of the best athletic wrestlers on the planet. And it just wasn't enough. Takeshita hits his finish. He takes the W. At some point, they were building towards Okada versus Takeshita. That was a match that I wanted to see. That was a match that I think a lot of other people wanted to see. But at this point, we're going to have a reset going into Dynamite. And Takeshita, he's a guy who's been on a really big hot streak lately at AEW. And I've liked the way that they're pushing him because he's a guy who had major feuds before, and he would always come up on the losing end. And the fact that he's been on this winning streak and he's the international champion, he's been able to show off the fact that he is a top guy. You know, and I always was, what would be the word? I was always timid about how they were going to use him because the only examples I can go off of is the WWE examples because it's the most notable ones. And the way that they book Japanese talent, is not just Japanese talent, but talent that their first language was in English, they always seem to hold those talents back. And I was scared that this was going to happen to guys like Takeshita at AEW, but Tony Khan has proven that he doesn't care really about that. And Takeshita's English is actually pretty damn good if you've seen it. The guy has really been improving at it. So Takeshita, they're about to put the rocket on his back, and he's been doing very well at the moment, and I'm happy to see that because I like Takeshita. Cool guy. All right. One time, Stone Cold crapped his trunks, and the Undertaker had to give him the pile driver to finish the match. That might have not been the Undertaker's, best day at the office, right? You would think in a situation like that, he would get paid hazard pay, wouldn't he? Wrestling business is so strange. Next, we got Bobby Lashley versus Swerve Strickland. This was the match that I was the most excited about going into the night because I saw reasons to where both of these guys had a strong case to win. And they made Bobby Lashley look like $1 million for the most part. We saw him make his debut on Dynamite against the two jabrones, Cheeseburger and his partner. But this was his real debut. A big-time pay-per-view match against a guy like Swerve. And you see Swerve come out to the ring. He had a mask on, and the mask that he came on was his face after the brutal steel cage match with Adam Page, basically showing off to the crowd that I mean business. And throughout this match, you saw spots where Bobby was showing off his strength. He had his signature spot where he's holding you up for a suplex, and he's holding you up in the air, and then he just holds on to you with one hand. I think that the way that they presented him was very good. Tony Khan has a history of not being able to properly book the big man. Like I said, we've had examples like Brian Cage, guys like Wardlow, Lance Archer, even Will Hobbs, that when he hasn't been injured, he's kind of only just been like this background player. They haven't really put the strap behind another guy's back and put him to the moon. And this match really started to pick up once they had Shelton Benjamin kicked out. Now, as you know, Bobby Lashley was flanked by his guys, MVP and Shelton Benjamin. There was a point in the match where there was a point in the match where MVP and Swerve Strickland teased the confrontation. You see MVP take a back seat, and you see Bobby ram Swerve Strickland through the barricades. And at that point, things kind of looked bad for Swerve. There was moments in time where Swerve had the momentum behind his side, but it just wasn't enough because Bobby was just too powerful for him. You see Bobby put Swerve in the Hurt Locker. Swerve passes out. Bobby picks up the W. Then you see them attack Prince Nana, and they put him in the Hurt Lock, and he passes out as well. Bobby versus Swerve should have been done in W. You understand that AEW sucks balls because of TK. Do you not like AEW, Tony? On this channel, I cover every type of wrestling, so I see everything. And there's things about AEW that I don't like. There's things about WWE that I don't like either. There's things about TNA that I don't like. Things about the GCW show that I watched earlier today that I didn't like. But I tend to find things that I like. And I don't. There's guys that do what I do. A lot more famous guys that do what I do. That they make profit. Guys like Eric Bischoff or JD from New York that make a living shitting on AEW, right? Which is their way to do it. I tend to want to talk more about the things that I like, and when there's things that I don't like, talk about it because nobody wants a cheerleader, right? Nobody just wants to hear all bad and all good. You want to hear a little bit of mixture of the both. So I tell the people who watch myself the good things that I like and the things that I don't like. But this match I did like. We're going into the main event. OC versus Jon Moxley for the AEW Championship. Jon Moxley has ran roughshod in AEW since he's taken on this new gimmick. Him and the Death Riders, they've been kicking ass, taking names. Anybody who's really gotten in their way has got a boot in the ass. You see them pull up to the ring in their signature pickup truck. OC has been a guy who is, if you think of an AEW guy, a guy who would only be around if AEW was around, it would be Orange Cassidy. And he's talking about how Jon Moxley is a guy who wants to take AEW and burn it and put it in his image. And OC is a guy who says AEW is fine the way it is, and I'm going to be the one who's going to defend it. Now, the thing that I like about Mox is, he's the champion, but he doesn't carry around the championship like around his waist or under his strap. He has it in a briefcase, kind of hiding it. And you see them walk into the ring in a briefcase. The way that the match starts, you see Maria have the belt in a briefcase, and you see it like handcuffed to her wrist. She unhandcuffs the briefcase, hands it to the ref, and she gives it to him. And you knew that this was going to play later on in the finish. And the best OC match ever was when he wrestled Dick Justice and got shot by an invisible gun. I've seen that match, man. I've seen that match. OC, man, let me tell you about Cassidy, bro. When I first saw it, I didn't really get him. People were like, it's this guy who doesn't really wrestle with his hands. And I was like, that's strange. Like, what? Then I started watching it. And sometimes we take wrestling a little bit too serious. At the end of the day, we're trying to be entertained, right? And it was funny. So a lot of people get worked up. Sometimes, Jim Cornette's notorious for getting worked up about stuff like that. But for me, it's like we wanted to have fun. And that was fun. It's the same way like if you go to a movie, you want to have fun. And if you have fun, I feel like the mission was accomplished. I love that match as well. And this match between Jon Moxley and Orange Cassidy started off hot. You see them doing the announcer. You had Justin Roberts announcing the names and the weights and all that stuff. And you see Orange Cassidy. As soon as Mox turned around, he gets Superman punch, another Superman punch, another Superman punch. They're brawling on the outside. You knew at some point, right? Because this was strange. There was no blood on this AEW show at all. And you knew at some point, especially with Jon Moxley being involved in the main event, that we were going to get blood at some point. And this orange turned to a blood orange. And Cassidy was busted open. It was a very brutal match. A lot of violence, which you expected. They talked about it multiple times before the show that we were going to get a brutal type of match. And you knew at some point that the Death Riders were going to get involved. And there's a pivotal point at the match towards the end where it looked as if the momentum was at Orange Cassidy's side. And the Death Riders come out, and then the Conglomerate and Team AEW come out to even out the odds. And it looked as if we were going to see Cassidy win the championship because Maria wanted to give Mox the briefcase to hit to Cassidy. The referee got distracted. Then we see OC hit Mox to Cassidy. And it was like a 2.99 count that we're going to see. I was like, holy shit. I was like, because going into it, I knew that Mox was going to win. But I was like, there's a small, tiny chance that we're going to see that happen, right? Then we see Mina get attacked by Willow Nightingale. And this is kind of a schmoz finish. anytime that you involve big factions like this, you're going to get schmoz finishes. And that's what we get. And then we see Wheeler Yuta appear, which we knew was going to happen as well, because Wheeler Yuta didn't come out with the guys in the beginning. When they did their shot earlier in the night of them coming out the pickup truck, we didn't see Wheeler. So OC loses. You see them drench OC with the liquid that they use to clean up the ring with, right? And they're going to do more dirty stuff to him until we see Hangman Adam Page come out, which was confusing. And I was like, what's Hangman doing? And we see Christian Cage come out and hit Jon Moxley with a kill switch. I always like to still call it the Unprettier. That's the OG name to it. So if I say the Unprettier, just know I'm talking about the kill switch, right? And it looked like we were going to finally see Christian Cage sign that contract to get his match for the AEW Championship. But as soon as it looked like he was going to sign it, because the way that they are doing it is like, unless that contract is signed, you can't just cash it in like a Money in the Bank does in WWE. And then you see Jay White come out, and Jay White takes Christian out. You see all the Death Riders walking out, and then you see them attack Jay White. And then eventually Jay White gets back and gets his get back. All of the Death Rider guys are leaving the arena. They're heading towards their pickup truck where we see this other car just T-bone the shit out of it, right? And you knew who it was. I knew who it was. You knew who it was before he even came out. Then you see the Death Riders steal this truck, and out of that badass car that hit the Death Riders pickup truck, you see none other than Darby Allin. Darby Allin comes out, busting his head, calling for the Mox, setting up Mox's next obvious opponent for whether they do it at World's End or whether they do it on a special edition of Dynamite. We are going to get Jon Moxley versus Darby Allin another go-around. And with this story, I feel like you would want the Mox to have a long reigning championship. But at the same time, it's like, I feel like Darby Allin is the guy to take the title off of Mox, but it's just all about timing. Darby Allin, to me, has been the guy to take the title from the beginning. I always felt like once they've had the direction of Mox is taking the championship, that Darby was the dude. But it's all about timing when it comes to wrestling. There's been other occasions where I thought, okay, it's this dude's time right now, and I was mad that he didn't get it. And then eventually, Cody Rhodes, right? We all thought that him losing the championship match against Roman at WrestleMania 39 was like, well, that was the time period to do it. Fast forward a year later when he finally won at WrestleMania 40, you're like, oh, shoot. We didn't know better. This was the right moment. So who knows? Like I said, Darby Allin is the guy to take the belt, but I just don't know if it's right now. I forgot what the AEW belt looks like. It has been in the briefcase for weeks now. It's a nice looking belt, man. It's expensive, though. Like, I wanted to buy a replica. Like, I actually have the Intercontinental Championship down there, too. The Attitude Era one. I wanted to buy an AEW Championship, but that thing is like $800. And I'm like, $800 for that. I like Nick Wayne's mom. I do as well. Do you think it was cool to have Darby Rebel out of the ceiling on the same show that Martha Hart was on? Well, from what I read, they asked her permission first. Like, I don't know if you remember, like, the Go Home show to Revolution where Sting fell from the ceiling too. They said that they asked Martha Hart her permission first, and I would assume that if she said no, or if she had any negative feelings or qualms about it, they wouldn't have done it. Especially if they want to keep that working relationship involved with their family. I don't think that they would not ask her at all, or they would go against her wishes if she said no. So if I had to give the Meltzer star rating for this show, I'd probably give it a solid 3. It's not the best AEW show that they've ever had. It's not the worst one. The highlight match for me of the show was Fletcher versus Ospreay. I'm really curious to see where they go with that. It seems that the only do that stunt when Martha is around. Well, I mean, I don't know, man. I don't really think about liking that because I don't know. It's such a strange thing to think about when it comes to wrestling, about how that moment even occurred. So sad, but holy shit, another person. So true. Tony, people watch these things, man. If you look after the fact, they watch. Like I've seen the number. It's just this is a late night stream. I was chatting to myself. People watch these streams, man. They just watch it a lot after, and I understand because I don't do them as often. Because if I did it every day, maybe it'd be different. But the fact that I do them like once a month, like next week, I'll be doing the one for. I'll be going live immediately after Survivor Series, and working on a guest that maybe you've heard of, maybe you haven't. Don't want to spill the beans because he hasn't given me the official go ahead. But there should be a guest with me on that show that has been on my channel before if you've seen any of my other stuff. But he's a cool guy. If you know wrestling or if you're into sports or if you're familiar with anything in the New York area, you would know who this person is. But yeah, man. But it's late night, Tony. I gotta go. Mommy's daycare. No, before. Because people do watch this afterwards. If you are in the Fayetteville, North Carolina, or the Spring Lake area, Mommy's Daycare Center is the place to be if you have any children 3 to 5 years old. They are a 4-star facility. They are probably the best daycare center in the area. They have this new drop-in service where it's like if you don't want any commitments when it comes to full-time care and you just want a couple of hours to yourself or a couple of hours to complete any errands or anything such as that, they are the spot to go. They have very affordable rates. They are a bilingual daycare center. They are, in my opinion, the best daycare that you can find in the Fayetteville, North Carolina area. That is my salesman pitch for them. Like I said, come back next week. We have the Survivor Series post-show War Games. So, Tony, if you're more into WWE, we're going to be dissecting that with a fine-tuned comb with a guest. Like I said before, like the video, subscribe if you haven't. I am Kevin Zwicker. I'm out.